drains and flooding, which is been on the minds of a lot of people. Hi Martin, hi Jill. Drains and flooding been on the minds of a lot of people, and just so you know, this weekend, this Saturday, I'm actually putting out another film about the flooding in Ironbridge. It's not been on my YouTube channel yet, but really great view. Not so much the drone footage, but on the ground footage of how it all happened with the flooding and that. So look out for that on the channel this weekend. So let's talk flooding. Okay, now behind me, as you can see, back to front is the new town plan. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go and have a look at that plan now. And one thing we'll say about Telford is when you've got an area, so we've got north and we've got south. Believe it or not, when Telford was built, it was only going to actually be half of the town. The rest of the northern section, northern of the motorway, was actually not part of the plan at all. So, so basically, the thing is about the northern part of the town, a lot of that was developed already. And, you know, the southern part had Dawley, Madeley, you know, and all of the smaller separated. But in terms of density, Donington and Trench was more of a dense area. So they had their own sort of drainage system there, which, to be honest with you, with the amount of houses that have been built, they've been improved vastly over the last few years. And Oakengate, Donington and Wellington have all had big drainage solutions put in, but we'll talk about those later. And it's very surprising about how they deal with their water. So first thing we're going to look at is I'm going to turn the camera around and we're going to go to the Telford plan. Okay, so here we've got, so you'll have to ignore the glare on it. Here we've got is the street plan of Telford. Okay, so you can see we've got the northern section there going over to Shorebirch, and you've got the industrial areas there going across there. So I'm just going to so if I stand in the way of the light, which might be a little bit better. So north, as I said to you, you can see that the northern area is very much built up. So we're going right the way across there. Okay, then we come into Wellington. Okay, so we're going to concentrate there. So Wellington, for instance. Now, the areas in blue are particularly either watercourses or pipes. So we can see that one running down from Shorebirch there. That actual one there is known as the Beanhill Brook, which runs down. So a lot of water will be discharged into that from them local areas, but also you've got a couple of pools and stuff like that. So not a major area, but there are quite a lot of watercourses north of Telford that have been widened to take water further north and discharge it. So we're coming across, so we've got a few lakes and pools. Look, you can just see you've got Apley Pool, you've got Dart Hill Pool. They aren't really part of the drainage system. So let's look at this one here, this long one. So this long one starts here at Newdale, or we know it now as Lawley Village. So the Lawley Village, the Lawley Village is quite an interesting one, because you can imagine how many houses have been built there, how many streets, so how much runoff is come off that. But surprisingly, they actually, in terms of drainage, Lawley is very self-sufficient in terms of what it does with its flood water. So going up, so we can actually see, can't we, the pipe work there that just starts. So this is basically an open channel. It runs in from roughly where Parker's Pool is at the back there. You can just see Parker's Pool. You can see Parker's Pool just there, can't you? So water off the M54 and the roads around there, such as the Western District Road, that basically runs down an open channel. Then it's culverted right the way through. So and then it's open. So a lot of the northern section drains are all actually open source. So just here, this big green area here, as you can see, this is what you call a reservoir. Now, it's not like the reservoirs that you would probably know, like Homer Lake. It's actually a dry reservoir, and it's designed for a once in a lifetime flood. So, you know, you can just see Ketley Sands is just then there, Wedgwood Crescent. So that is sitting next to a huge dry reservoir. Then it disappears underneath the ground, then goes right under Hadley, right under Lee Gomri, and then comes out in an open channel just sort of north of Millstream Way, and then that heads off right the way up to the north and then connects into rivers like the Tern, etc. Okay, so pretty much the water from Wellington is just distributed into brooks and things like that, nothing major. But a lot of the excess water in flood situations is there's quite a lot of like deep chambers around Wellington that are buried deep under the ground that actually will store stormwater off the road until the storm threat goes down, and then it's released back gently into the system. So as we move across, we've now got this one here. So we've got Middle Pool, which is just not by Wonbridge and Trench Lock, and then we've got Trench Pool. So both of these pools deal with water from Wonbridge. So Middle Pool, it basically empties into Wonbridge, and Trench Pool empty into Trench empties into Trench Pool. Now both of these now are Severn Trent reservoirs, so they are designed for the mass storage of water. So you can see that originally it was a reservoir for the canal. So they're quite self-sufficient, those two, working on their own. But so when Telford was built, from the bottom half down, you can see things get a little bit more exciting down there. And that is because the whole section from the motorway down slopes gently down towards the River Severn. So that water has to be managed. But over here, we've got Priorsley and St George's, okay? So again, the same sort of thing. Oaken Gates, again, has its own flood storage system. So actually, under this field here, just here where I'm zooming into now, into that field there, underneath there's a large underground storage tank that holds a lot of the storm water. So you can't see where that water's going, but believe me, it's actually being managed. So let's come over to Priorsley. So parts of the A5 bypass empty into the flash at certain points, and it's normally underneath the wharfage where it's not seen. And that basically, the flash, now it's interesting how the flash got its name, because it's actually been remodelled for a pool to actually deal with a flash flood. And one thing's good about the flash is it's actually got quite a high capacity of water, so it can take quite a lot. So it's designed to take a flash flood. So that runs down an open channel, and that links into Priorsley Lake, or Castle Farm Lake as it's known, because it was built on the site of Castle Farm. And actually, when they were actually digging that lake out, apparently they found a hoard of Roman coins. That's quite interesting. But it's connected up with what you call the Wesley Brook, which is an open channel between the flash and Priorsley Pool. Okay, so what happens then, once it gets here to Priorsley, then basically there's a siphon there that basically levels the water off, and that goes down the Wesley Brook into, it only lets a certain amount out, because again, Priorsley Lake's got a huge storage capacity, and it's all controlled by computers. Now that actually lets the water then, so that goes down into Shifnal. So now we know that they're going to develop where the F is. They're developing all of that area now, and that's going to be a future development. Okay, so all of that now will be drained down into a new pool that's actually just being built just there. Okay, for all of that new development. So as I say, motorway, this is where it gets interesting, because when they built Telford, They actually built Telford from the bottom and they built it up towards the top, okay? But what was needed was a drainage system that could drain all of these new areas, because the highest concentration of new housing estates was in the South Telford area, such as Brookside, Sturchley, Hollingswood, Randley, you've got Northwest Dorley, you've got Sutton Hill, you've got Woodside. Those areas create a hell of a lot of runoff, and this is where it gets interesting. So the first culvert that we've got is this one here. It runs just by Old Park. It goes across and then follows the field along. Now this is only a 5-foot pipe. It's not 5-foot diameter pipe. It comes underneath Forge Interchange and then it wraps itself right the way around Rampart Way. Then when it gets to Rampart Way, just there by that junction, it goes into a mighty big 9-foot pipe. Now why would it go? Why would you ask? Why would it go from a 9-foot pipe? Why would it go from a 6-foot pipe into a 9-foot pipe? That's interesting, isn't it? Because it's all about what we call catchment, okay? So a catchment area is, for instance, this, okay? So Stafford Park is a catchment area, meaning that we can expect that most of Stafford Park is basically tarmac it's tarmac roads, concrete yards. So there's going to be a hell of a lot more runoff on Stafford Park than there is potentially going to be at Hollingswood, okay, because between Hollingswood there's ribbons of grass, etc. So the higher the runoff, the higher the catchment area, meaning how much surface water it generates, the bigger the pipe. So let's look. So our biggest catchment area here is the town centre, isn't it? So all of that water from Telford town centre, so all of those car parks, all of the concrete, the roads, all of that drain into that big 9-foot pipe which is there. You can see it in blue. So that then is basically hidden underground. Sned's Hill and the EP both drain into this particular culvert. As we come down, we follow that culvert down, and it actually follows exactly the same route as the old railway did. And the reason they did that is because they had an open channel already and they could literally just dig it out and lay the pipes in there. And most of this section, these pipes are all big concrete sections that were just laid on the bed. So they actually cut right the way through and they go into Randley Pool. Look, Randley Pool is the most important reservoir in Telford because it handles such a lot of water, okay? So that's that big pipe dealing with the EP, Telford Town Centre and the Eastern Primary. So that's quite a big pipe going on there. Now in a bit I'll show you some pictures of what they actually look like. So going over, so let's look at the Stafford Park catchment area. Okay, Stafford Park has actually got its own direct link to the River Severn because of the catchment area. So if you think of how big Stafford Park is, don't forget these make the housing estates like Hollingswood and Randley look absolutely tiny. So it starts off in about an 8-foot pipe that basically there's just some small collector pipes in a yard, and that basically brings all of the water from Stafford Park into this pipe. So then it runs down the Randley Valley. So can you see it down there running down? It's en route to Homer Lake. So now it's no secret that when they actually built for particular areas like LNRs, which are local nature reserves, such as Randley Valley, they were actually built on the route of these drains. So when you're walking up something and you think, oh, that's funny, that's not been built on, that's usually the reason why that you're actually walking on top of it. So I know when you walk from by Nedge Hill and you walk around the Randley Valley, you are actually walking on top of that drain. So that drain is quite shallow. So it's only that drain, and I would say that drain it's a box culvert. So it's actually probably, I would say, 7 foot square, I would say. and it's very, very shallow, quite literally a few less than a metre above the ground. So that comes down and that comes into Homer Lake, Telford's second most important reservoir. Okay, so that discharges. Now, to be honest with you, in terms of how much water is coming out of this pipe, it's actually very, very low capacity, so there's not a great deal in that comes out of there really. I've never really seen it very big. But also connecting into that pipe as well is the flush out pipe from the reservoir, from the freshwater reservoir at the top of Nudge Hill. So when they want to empty the reservoir, they can empty it straight into there. And obviously the new housing estate there, you can just see that one that has been designated for a long time at Nudge Hill. That water will be discharged into that drain. So we've now got our link now. So we've now got our motorway. We're running into Ranley Pool. So let's go over here to Dorley. So Dorley's quite interesting. So right here, right at Heath Hill, just at the top of Lawley Bank, there is a tunnel running underneath the road. Now this tunnel is deep, very deep, and it was actually cut out and blasted out of the rock, and it was that deep that they had to have decompression chambers in there to actually build this tunnel. And it's what you call a twin tunnel, which means it's also carrying a sewer pipe as well at the same time. So this runs right the way down across Dorley, and then it comes up the side of Mallinsley, then it takes a right turn, then it comes across past the rugby club, and then actually goes into an area where there's actually a natural waterfall. So basically they wanted to take it on a different route, but they ended up taking it through this waterfall, which was called the Grotto. And I'm sure you've seen the waterfall there. So that basically comes out, and that collects a lot of mine water and disuse, you know, soakaways and things like that. So that area there, which has been undergone extensive mining, is absolutely collects a hell of a lot of water, and it's permanently flushing that water even when it isn't raining. So it shows how some of this ground is so waterlogged. So that's made its way now into Ranley Pool. So at the moment we've got the motorway culvert coming in, the big one, and we've got this small one coming in here. So what's next? Well, right here, where you can see right underneath Sturchley Chimney, there is a pipe under there which is nearly 10 foot in diameter. It is absolutely huge. It's drilled right the way through, and it's the main feeder in. So anybody, I'm sure a lot of you have been on Ranley Pool and noticed the bit as you walk down the steps, you actually step on top of what's almost like a moated castle, isn't it? Well, that is what we call a drill down siphon. Now that is one hell of a piece of kit there, and it drops down, inside there, it drops down probably another 20-30 feet inside, and that basically is a siphon that works automatically like a reverse bullcock. So when the water level gets high, it activates the siphon, and it almost opens its sluices and lets quite literally a tsunami of water out into that large catchment pipe there. And that's why that pipe is so big, because it is able to deal with a once in a lifetime flood if it ever happened. But right at the end, but funny enough, that big 10-foot pipe suddenly goes in to a small 8-foot pipe. That's a bit unusual, isn't it? Because if that once in a lifetime flood happened, then that water, they would only send the right amount of water to Homer Lake to make sure that isn't put in danger. The rest of it actually comes across, and there's a little pool just at the bottom there called Fletcher's Pool, just at the bottom of Northwood Terrace, and that is actually shaped in a bowl, and that's actually another one of those dry reservoirs that can hold a huge capacity. So if we had that once in a lifetime flood, I can guarantee people of Brookside, Ranley, Sturchley would be completely safe. So it's actually quite an interesting thing. But where that does split off there. Now what's quite interesting is when they actually built this, what was quite interesting, is when they built Ranley Pool, One of the things that you have to do is you don't want too much water going in there when you're trying to build a reservoir. It was already had water in it, but parts of it had to be dammed to actually create the sluice at the one end. So what they actually did is they actually built a pipe. They built a pipe from here across to here and then down this pathway down there. So there's an actual pipe there, that this one that runs up here. It runs at the side of Ranley Pool across to Hollingswood, that's actually disused completely, and it is very, very, very deep. It's probably 20 foot, 30 foot, something like that underground. Probably even deeper than that. So yeah, that's actually an abandoned section of tunnel, which is quite incredible when you've actually been in it. So let's follow the journey back. So where that floodplain intercepts, the pipe disappears. So we've got a good 8-foot pipe that runs down. It runs in under Grange Pool. So bearing in mind, Grange Pool is a man-made pool designed to take water from parts of the town park, and that drains the town park. Then it also just drains back into this culvert. Then it comes down and pretty much follows the original route of the Maybrook that came down, and then we come down to Homer Lake. So it discharges into Homer Lake. Now that particular pipe there is ferocious when it's full. When Homer Lake when Ranley Pool opens its sluices, it is absolutely, you would not want to be in that pipe, because it could easily fill that 8-foot diameter pipe, no problem. So now we're getting on towards the we're now getting on towards the River Severn now, aren't we? So now we've got all this water now coming in. We've got Ranley Pool opening its sluices. We've got all of that coming from the catchment area. Then when we get to Homer Lake does a good job. So Homer Lake releases only a certain amount. No, it isn't very big. Believe it or not, the pipe leading out of Homer Lake is only 4 foot in diameter. So it only lets a certain amount of water from Homer Lake into the sewer system to the town, to the River Severn. So why have they done that then? Why is that? Why have they actually done that? Well, the reason being, it was all this area here in green is what we call a floodplain. Now this is the South Telford floodplain. Now this is actually the floodplain itself can hold a capacity, and I'll show you some pictures of it in action, and it is absolutely completely incredible. So you've got that tiny 4-foot pipe that's coming out of Homer Lake. It's coming down the centre, then all of a sudden it goes into a bigger pipe. Now, why would it go into a bigger pipe? Because we've got Halesfield, another large catchment area. So there's a lot of water off the road. So it basically goes into an 8-foot pipe again. It comes across. Now, what's interesting here, just at this point here, where that little dot is there, on that corner there where it meets the road, this is where the Madbrook splits off. So what it actually does is only sends a certain amount of water back out to the Madbrook, which runs out here, and actually culverts it. So it's actually still flourishing the Madbrook with water, but from that point, the Munster tunnels back then, the gigantic big 9-foot, 10-foot diameter, drilled out, blasted tunnel that's underneath here. It goes all the way under Hills Lane. It follows itself all the way down to Bliss Hill to the outfall at the bottom. Now that is a mighty big drain, that is, and it's there because it's taking water from Sutton Hill, it's taking water from Madeley, and it's taking water from Coalport as well. So that is a big area. But what have we got here? We've still got another little bit of a network here. So we're over at Dawley Pools. So Dawley Pools drains Little Dawley, parts of Aqueduct. So that comes out, quite a small culvert, comes around, links into Madeley Court. All of these are reservoirs, have all got a job to do. Madeley Court balances it up. Brookside's water is also discharged into Madeley Court as well, and into Homer Lake. It comes out, it picks up the water from Tweedale, then it comes across and joins into the big mighty sewer. So we know why that has to be so big, don't we? Because it's got that capacity. So actually looking at it, looking at that network, it ensures that South Telford doesn't get flooded, because it's all masterminded that way. Flooding is improved in North Telford vastly with the introduction of these big tanks. So let's now have a look, turn around and let's have a look at some of the pictures, okay, that we've got. Okay, just bear with me just a second and I will pull them up. Okay, right. Okay, so we're just going to go to the drainage pictures. So we're going to start first of all with this picture. So this picture is Homer Lake. Now, as near as we get to a once in a lifetime flood, this is Homer Lake actually tipping the top of the dam. Now, I was there to see that, and that is an incredible sight. Only ever happened once, nearly happened twice, but it never quite never quite got there. Okay, so we'll go across. So this is the bridge to the floodplain. So you can see that much water is going out to the floodplain. That's not going to Iron Bridge, is it? It's not coming out at the culvert at Iron Bridge. You can see the spillway. Normally that spillway is normally quite shallow. It's probably about 8 foot, 9 foot. So you can see that's completely and utterly full. So South Telford, parts of South Telford will never ever get flooded. So there's the castle we talked about. So that's the Siphon on Randy Pool. Okay. And so I told you, didn't I, about the culvert that was... So you can see that half of the pipe has actually got the sewer pipe in as well. So they're saving space by actually creating a twin tunnel almost, which is quite clever. Now that tunnel there is around about 8 foot in diameter. Okay, there you go. Now this is basically the Stafford Park culvert, and this is just coming into Homer Lake, and it is just coming into to the sluice gate at the bottom of Homer Lake. Now you can actually see the grooves where these pipes have actually been slotted together, and this is just coming under the area of Roxeter Way in Homer Lake. So you can see here, this is the big outfall at Coalport. So that is all of that water that's being collected from Homer Lake, Halesfield, Bliss Hill, Madeley, Sutton Hill, and also Madeley Court. You can see that's quite a lot. But I've actually seen that a lot worse than that is there. So this is the super tunnel I was telling you about that comes out from Randley Pool. You can see the individual tunnel segments. They've all been individually dug out and then actually concreted in these rings. So that is around about 10 foot diameter. It's quite vast, and that actually runs right underneath the Sturchley chimney. Okay, so you can see here, now this is a picture of Homer Lake a long time ago. So it shows you can see how much you can see the tide mark on the lake. This is before they did it, so you can actually see how deep Homer Lake actually is. So they were doing some work here, and a lot of people, I don't know if they remember the railings around the outside. So this is a picture of Homer Lake before Homer Lake when it was drained. Now if you look carefully, you can actually see running through Homer Lake the actual original Maid Brook. Look, you can see the channel running along there, and that's it. The actual original brook is actually sitting underneath there still, which is actually what they flooded the area to create it. So there you go, you can see the floodplain area at at Halesfield there, the Halesfield floodplain. So a lot of that, so normally if that could have been connected straight to the River Severn, that's only a little bit of it. So there is the sluice, that is the sluice. So that basically levels Homer Lake, and it just keeps it at the optimum level, or they will use a siphon just to drop the level if they're expecting a lot of water. Now this is the super junction that I was telling you about. So this is right underneath, just near Ranley Chimney. So to the left, that there takes you right under the castle on Ranley Pool. This side is the tunnel that was built, the bypass tunnel. Well, they built it, the tunnel that's not even being used. So you can see there's hardly any water coming down that, but most of the water's coming down that. It's quite an extraordinary picture. And then you can see the big 12-foot pipe there as well. And guys, just remember, this is all underneath your feet. You could probably go in for a nice walk in the Telford Town Park and you probably wouldn't even realise that's there. So look at this. This is the same spot, okay? And there's the TDC guys standing there, actually being really proud of their achievements with this massive engineering feat that they've built. So you can see the bypass tunnel to the right-hand side. There's a bit of history, isn't it? There's not many people get to take that picture. So there you go. So this is Buchanan, who basically you can see them actually drilling out. This section is the section that goes under Hills Lane. So you can actually see all they do is fill those segments in with concrete. So you can see that. You can see compared to him how big that tube is. So that is that tube there. So here's a good picture. Now this is during extreme rainfall. Now you can see that Homer Lake has actually created another lake in the floodplain, look. All of that excess water. So it's so clever. So when you're going over, when you're actually travelling over the bridge, over by Homer Lake, just think it's actually what that is the dam. That is actually the dam. Thousands and thousands of tons of rock were put into that dam to create that. So this here is a picture of the siphon at by the castle. You can just see it's a nice sort of just a little opening in there, just lets the right amount through at Ranley Pool. Okay. So looking now, let me just show you. So we've got here. You can just see this now. This is the floodplain at Halesfield. Telford is expanding, isn't it? Telford is getting much bigger, isn't it? We've got new housing estates popping up everywhere. So, and I think Jules said something about the power station, and it worries her about flooding and stuff like that there. Yeah, they're all very good questions about flooding, etc. But things have changed, and I don't probably think people have noticed. So let's think about housing estates like Lawley, etc. Let's take Lawley for an example. So what developers have to do now is when they build a new housing estate, they have to build what we call a sustainable drainage system, a SUDS it's called, or a flood alleviation pond. So you'll start to see now little sort of ponds appearing on housing estates, and it just depends on how many houses there are. So those little flood alleviation ponds basically are designed to take the water off the housing estate, off the roads, off the gutters of the houses, and divert it into this pool. And it enables the water then to drain off naturally into the drainage, into the natural ground. Okay. Now I'm going to give you some examples. Like for instance, the Ever Ready factory. When they built on that, they've actually built a flood alleviation pond just off that. Lawley, you'll probably notice down on Birchfield Way, there's 3 or 4 of them down there. As you come down West Centre Way, where Taylor Wimpey are building, you'll notice that there's one at the bottom of there. So all new housing estates now have to have these flood alleviation ponds, and to be fair, they work absolutely amazing. So they're not going to be pushing that water out into and overloading the public public sewers, that's what they call them. So we're guaranteed that the drainage is sorted out. Now the only thing that tends to go into public drainage now is water off public highways, such as roads, any kind of streets and things like that. So for instance, with the plans for the power station. Now the power station site is actually unique because they actually built that site higher to anticipate potential floods like that. So the actual site is almost built on a dam itself, really, as it goes round. And you can only appreciate that when you take a drone up and you can actually look at the layout of the power station site. But if you actually look at the plans very carefully, you'll see that there are quite a lot of flood alleviation ponds included in that development, which is really, really important. So it's enabling, so the chances of flooding on the power station site are pretty minimal, really. I don't think there's much of a risk at all. And you know, so let's look at flooding now. Let's look at the gorge, for instance. Let's look at what is going on in the gorge. So I'm gonna start. We're just gonna take a message. There is some drainage ponds. Yeah, that's it. So she's saying there are drainage ponds built, so that solves that. So let's look at the Lidbrook, okay? So we've got the Lidbrook and the Loamholme collecting water from all over the place, you know, all over those fields, all collecting together, and then coming through Colebrook Dale. Now let's remember one thing, okay? We would not have what we've got today. We would not have the beautiful area of Colebrook Dale. We would not have the Ironbridge Gorge, almost certainly, if that brook, that Loamholme or the Lidbrook Dingle didn't cut that gorge out down through Colebrook Dale. So remember how that happened originally. So we're talking about the mighty Lake Lapworth, which is what the River Severn originally fed off during the Ice Age. Obviously the Ice Age has come and it's cut that gorge right out with meltwater and created the gorge as we know it, and the way it's eaten away. But if you want to know a bit more about that, then watch my Making of World Famous film on the channel, and then you can find out how that actually happens. So, you know, we've got to remember that gorge has been cut out, that gorge through Colebrook Dale and through has been cut out by that river, okay? That's created that beautiful place, okay? Over centuries it's just gone down. And you know, Abraham Darby, he harnessed that power of that water and we had the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution. So one thing you can't tame, you can tame water, of course you can, but it's a really difficult one at the Ironbridge Gorge. So we know that you know, the Colebrook Dale, we've got various water courses running through where it comes through, even where they're building the new houses at the former Colebrook Dale site. They're opening the channel up there. We know there's a lot of culverts running in and out, and I think it's quite a complex system of drains. But one of the problems is when we've got the water, so we've all seen Lidbrook Dingle and Loamholme when it's overflowing with water. All that water's trying to squeeze through those culverts. Then when it reaches the bottom, it gets to the bottom of Dale End, okay, where Foundry Mews are. Then we've got the River Severn. So we've got the culvert that the Loamholme comes out of, okay? We've got that culvert that's supposed to naturally discharge the water into the River Severn, which it normally does on normal times. It'll flow, drop into the River Severn. But what happens when that level of the River Severn comes up, the River Severn comes up higher than the culvert, and we have water coming down the opposite direction, that's going to meet, that the water's going to start ingressing up the pipe, and then it's the water coming down is going to meet, and it meets exactly where Dale End Cafe is now. And what we've got is, when they built the houses, they decided to put manholes, those grids, as you can see them where the car park is, and the water just spills out of it and then just floods that area. Because it's got a natural slope to the road, it will just sit in there and flood that area. You know, ultimately the solution to that would be to actually potentially build another culvert running through there, but it's that river level that's always going to be a problem unless it was pumped higher, which is not. So I don't think the problem with the problem, either they create a bigger tunnel running through, but you've got water coming up and water coming down, and they're always going to meet at that point. So I'd be interested to see what the overall plan would be for that. So the River Severn. So we've got the River Severn collecting water. Now, let's talk about Shrewsbury, for instance, okay? Let's find out why there's so much water coming down the Severn. So, how many people have paved over their garden? How many people have had a new block paved driveway? Okay, so if you have a whole estate like Woodside and they decide to pave over all of their driveways, all of their patios, then what you actually do is you have a catchment area, a larger catchment area. And remember, we talked about the catchment areas of Halesfield and Stafford Park. With the larger catchment area, you need bigger pipes to take that water away, don't we? Okay. But because Woodside and Woodside Madeley were never designed to have that kind of catchment area or have that much surface space, that water will end up flooding the areas, and it'll get worse and worse and worse as time goes on. So Shrewsbury, for instance, they do the same. So Shrewsbury will pave over all of their gardens, over their streets. I mean, you think of Shrewsbury town centre, for instance, there isn't, apart from the quarry, it's pretty much streets, isn't it? Concrete streets, etc. So you know, people will pave over their back gardens, and all of that extra water that's generated will all come down into the River Severn. So, and you've got all of those places all the way up who are doing the same thing. We've got water collected off the fields. So that's all going to come down and then into the gorge. Okay, so what you're trying to do is you're trying to squeeze that amount of water through that funnel and potentially cause yourself a problem where you're going to get flooding, because it can't go that way, it can only go up. So the amount of water, so I think over the last 25 years, 25 even 30 years, people have been constantly paving over their gardens and actually creating more surface water. So what can we do about that? Well, we can start thinking about what we do. We think about our own sustainability. You know, I've got a gravel driveway, so I've got a permeable driveway. But you only have to look at a street view plan of Woodside or Sutton Hill or anything, and you will see the amount of concrete in these gardens. So what we're actually doing is we're turning, I know people say about a concrete jungle, but we're actually turning our own town into a concrete jungle. We're doing that, okay? So I think the plans have got to be, we have got to solve this by putting less water into our rivers and actually letting it soak a lot better into the areas. You know, I mean, the flood barriers, they are a temporary solution. They really are. because what the flood barriers do, where it stops the water going that way, it ends up making the flooding worse on the, is that a word? On the opposite side of the river, so their level's going to go high. There's still the same amount of water has got to squeeze through where the iron bridge is, so it makes the situation a lot worse for other people further down the river. So how can we control that water? So one way is flood control, which is potentially using the valley that we've got where the S-bends are, of managing that in such a way that that can hold a vast amount of water in capacity, almost like a dam, but actually a weir where it's actually slowing that water down coming through the gorge and managing a little bit better. And that's what I think we need, is an engineering solution further up the river, because what we don't want is permanent barriers in the gorge, because I'm sure some of you have lived in the gorge for many years and have seen it. You know, the river's up, the river's down, the river's up, river's down, the river's really bad, it's really bad, you know, and you've seen it all before, haven't you? And you know, it's questionable. Is it getting worse? Is it getting worse? It seems to be more frequent now, but we've just got to, you know, everybody wants to sit outside on the pavement in Iron Bridge, enjoy a cup of coffee, but what the pavement does is actually, there is so much concrete surfaces and in Iron Bridge, it's unreal. You know, the car parks, they all need to be, the car parks need to be gravel or a permeable surface. You know, we've got to start looking at sustainability on actually doing something ourselves, because like we were saying, all of that water that's coming out at Coalport from Telford, that's coming off our roofs, our roads, is all being sent down to Bridgenorth and Stourport and what have you, and all of them are getting flooded with our water ultimately. So, and that's what's happening at from Shrewsbury and beyond. You know, Iron Bridge is almost like the bottleneck in it, and it just trying to, you know, they're just trying to squeeze it through. But thankfully we do live in a town, not unlike Shrewsbury, we do live in a town that actually most of Telford does not get flooded. It's only the gorge, and unless we had a big engineering solution to it, it's probably going to continue doing that. But just remember, you know, guys, I think it's worth noting that it's that gorge that you know, it's that river that's created that nice place for you to live, enjoy, to sit outside, to have chips and to admire it. That's there, that's done that, and you're trying to tame that. That's something that's been there a long time before us. We are just mere viewers of that small timeline of when we were alive, of enjoying that river, you know. But I think we all need to take responsibility of all of our garden projects, of what we do, with how we landscape our gardens, etc. You know, and think about that. Actually, am I adding to the problem? Remember, what am I saying is, are you part of the problem or the solution? So, in a nutshell, I know the council was saying this week that we know they need to go to the government about a permanent solution to this. But ultimately, I lost train of thought there. Ultimately, the council need to take responsibility when it comes to planning and actually making sure that anybody who wants to build a patio or a driveway in their gardens needs to seek planning permission, and their projects should be, I mean, even if it was a reduced price, because not everybody can afford it, can they? Well, I suppose you can afford, if you can afford to have your garden done, you could probably afford to, you know. Hi Mark, you just asked me where the Randley Siphon is controlled from. It actually isn't. It's actually completely and utterly mechanical. so basically what it's done is there's a pipe in there like the siphon, and it knows it's to do with sensors. The sensors on Rantley Pool which will tell it how much, so like a reverse ball cock for instance. So when you've got a toilet, when you flush the toilet, the ball cock goes down, doesn't it? Okay, and then once it fills back up, it knows to stop. It's the reverse thing. So when the water level rises, it knows when it gets to a certain point, it activates the siphon. So the siphon then basically, it opens the sluice, and then all of the water suddenly shoots down into the tunnel below, and off to Homer Lake, and vice versa. The same thing happened. You know, on the top of Rantley Pool, there's actually a grill on there. That's the once in a lifetime flood. But I've actually been inside the reservoir at Rantley, and it's cavernous inside. It's quite an amazing structure, and it's so deep below that castle, and you can just see the manhole covers on the top there. But it's actually quite a spectacle when that sluice does open, and I've only ever filmed it twice in my life, where the sluice opens and you're standing at that sluice gate, and you can see this big tsunami of water coming through the pipe, you know it's going to go down to the Homer Lake pipe. But there's just a moment where you just think, if it ever came through and it was more water and it went through Fletcher's Pool, that'd be a spectacle. But I have got footage of the sluice opening, which is treasured footage. Because I do want to make another Telford Drains film. But if you want to, I think there's if you want to have a look at it, Mark, if you go onto my YouTube channel, there's a trailer there called When Telford Floods. I think it was a trailer for the video. It actually shows the sluice opening there. So if anybody else has got any questions about the drainage system there, let me just have a look. Jules talks about dredging. The trouble is with the River Severn, is predominantly a lot of it is rock based at the bottom. So it's not like there's a lot of silt, because the river's quite fast and there's not a massive amount of silt underneath that Severn. If you look at some of the early pictures of when they did a cofferdam, and when they did the foundations, you can actually see you can actually see how deep the actual bed of the river is. So dredging it would be really difficult, because it actually is a really uneven base. You can only see when you get down to Jackfield how rocky the base gets and what have you. So it's not deep as you think it is, really. It's just that there's too much water coming through, and you know, when you've got that amount of water coming through, there isn't a massive amount of silt coming through from that, really, because a lot of the silt gets dumped up at on the meanders of the S-bends, because that's how those S-bends are created. Because that's how they create oxbow lakes, is that when they're going around the corner, they deposit their silt, so you get that kind of beach effect that eventually over time will block it off, and then the river finds a new route. Because it's interesting, the River Severn used to run north of Shrewsbury and then come back down, and it actually created a kind of oxbow lake effect on it. You know, so just looking at my message, any other messages? Yeah, I will share the video of when the sluice opens. If you just bear with me, I will just see if I can grab it now, and I'll show it you. This is the video about Rantley Pool, of it opening the sluices. Let me just see if I can find it. If you've got any more questions on the on the drainage system, just fire away. I'll be happy to answer them. So I'm just going onto my channel now. Give me 2 secs. I'll see if I can find it. There we go. Contents. There we go. Should have it for you in a minute. Okay, just bear with me. Let's have a look. Just going through it now. When Telford floods. Won't be 2 seconds. yeah, I actually made a film about the drainage system. I think it's called. If you actually look at some of my Homer Lake films, there's a film called A Journey to the Severn, One Wet Weekend, and I think that's in it. Yes, I think it is. Let me just show you guys, okay? So here you go. I'll swing you around so you can see it, okay? So this is a little film that I made. So this is basically just showing what happened with water in Telford, okay? So it's a hell of a wet day, so I'm just going to have a look at the drainage system. So you can have a little look now. So I'm sort of off towards Homer Lake. So this is, so you can see here, let me just come back a little bit. So this is the stream that's coming from Dawley. So this is the water. Yeah, Jules, the other lake behind Homer Lake is not another lake. It's actually only a lake when there's a flood going on. So it's actually a floodplain, but it is designed to act like another lake in theory. So you can see now this is the waterfall. So this is going into Ranelagh Pool. So this is called One Wet Weekend. I think it's called, yeah, on my channel. There you go, you can see that. So yeah, it's quite spectacular footage. I will share the link. I will share the link. I will share the link later on. Okay. Well, guys, thank you very much for spending the time with me and having a look at that. Next weekend, I am sorry, not next weekend. Next Friday, I am hoping to talk about a bit of a tricky subject, this one, so it might be a bit controversial. Oh, hang on. I think we might have the sluice there. I think, there we go. Watch. The sluice is about to open any minute now. Watch. Is it? Oh yeah, watch. Here it comes. Woo! There you go, it's come back up again. There you go, guys. See that, eh? See that? I did promise you, didn't I, eh? There you go. A rare glimpse of the Ranelagh sluice opening, so you can actually watch that. I'll put the link up to that video. Yeah, so next week I am going to look at the people that hate Telford. the people who have... I want a good debate with this, because I want to it's about what has Telford done for you, okay? So if you want to join me on that debate, you're more than happy. Just send me a message. I might even rope Marcus Keane into this one. So we're going to talk about Telford as it was originally. So and the problem, why people dislike it, so why certain people hate Telford so much, okay? So that's next week, and I'll think of a quirky title for that, and we'll just talk about how people really despise the new town and why that is, but with an interesting twist on it. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I know, you know, it's probably been an hour of your time, and I hope you've learned a little bit more about flooding and what it happens. I mean, it's not all bad, is it? At least a lot of the housing estates now are sorted out, haven't we? But I recommend, I'll put this video on, some great footage of the dingle as well, so I'll post that up in a minute. Okay, guys, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I will see you all next week. See you later. Over and out.